Good evening, everyone. Welcome. Nice to see you. Thank you for being here. I'd like to call, are we okay? Yeah. I'd like to call our special meeting of the Town Plan and Zoning Commission to order. Today is Tuesday, November 19th at 6:30 p.m. My name is Rob Klee. I'm the chair of our Woodbridge Town Planning and Zoning Commission. Other members of the commission who are with us here tonight are Yoni Samir, Andrew Skolnick, Jeff Kennedy, Kathy Hunter, Ben Cherry. And I think that's all we have. And First Selectman Cardozo, good to have you with us as well. We're ably supported, as always, by Chris Sullivan, who is our town land use analyst and zoning enforcement officer. It's nice to be here in person. And our agenda tonight has been available on the town website. And our special meeting tonight concerns our town's plan, or the commission's plan of conservation and development. Tonight, we're going to receive and discuss items in the development of that plan, with our consultant, SLR International. And they're going to talk about their ongoing work on the update of our town's planning of conservation development. Our goal tonight is to provide SLR feedback on their report of the October open house. And we're going to, I believe, go over the draft vision statements and perhaps a few other things on timeline and next steps for the POCD. So unless there's anything further to do, I'd love to have our SLR folks come up and remind you're on, for the general audience, remind everyone who you are, and then we'll go through your PowerPoint.
Yes, good night. Good evening, everyone. Robert Collins with SLR for the record, and I'm also joined tonight by Taylor Daigle from our team. So tonight, as you already mentioned, we want to kind of just catch you up as to where we are in the process, and as we're kind of making a transition to plan development. So we're just going to kind of go through, I'm going to run through the status, and then we're going to talk about the plan development in the first phases of that, which is really kind of coming up with a community vision statement, and then talking about what's going to be happening over the next month, next several months. Okay, Taylor, if you can go to the next slide.
Could you hit the lights just on that side? It might be easier for people to see. Thank you.
Okay, so in your handout, or if you can see the screen, we're looking at the project status update, and this is the kind of process diagram that we have shared with you before, and so what this really shows, and what I wanted to kind of clarify, is that for the last couple months we have been working, closely with you to develop the baseline review and assessment. Develop the community profile and existing conditions, review other documents, and then also to engage, do some of the initial engagement activities, which included the community survey, which was completed. Also developed the project website to continue to share information, and then we also had our first open house event to get information out to the community also, and then to share information with them, and then to gather some information with them. All of those documents that I just mentioned, or the community survey summary results, as well as the community profile and existing conditions report, and the open house summary report have all been posted to the story map, so that the community can read them and share it with them. I know that, Commission Chair, you did mention about the summary report for the open house. We were assuming that we didn't receive any comments back from anybody on that. We did receive some points from Ms. Hunter, but when we took them under advisement, but we didn't get any grammar changes or any observation changes. So we were assuming that was complete. If anybody has an edit or a comment on that, we could certainly add that. But it has been posted to the story map, just for your information. So with that, we're really kind of changing, going into like the next major task, and really getting into the document itself. And we're moving to the plan development stages. And this really kind of includes two parts. One is kind of the development of the overall plan vision, and setting like themes and goals and strategies. And then that's followed by the more detailed dive into those goals and theme areas to kind of develop policies and action steps, as well as the text for the document. Important to note too is that your existing POCD is filled with a lot of, as we know, and we've talked about this since the beginning, we know that your existing POCD is filled with lots of very good information and a lot of goals and strategies and things like that that we know are going to be carried forward. So when I talk about, developing goals and actions and policies, we know a lot of them are going to be kind of carried forward. Actually, can you go back? So, and then underlying all of the project schedule or the project process slide is town collaboration and engagement. So obviously there will be, through the draft plan, we're going to continue to collaborate with you as we get through each one of those kind of junctures. And then we're also going to be engaging with the community at another open house to share that information. This next process that we're going to be going through will then lead to us having a final draft plan, which we will meet up with you all again, as we've mentioned, to kind of verify at that point whether the plan is at a substantial completion draft document. And at that point, we would all agree that it would then go into the last phase of the project, which is really the 65-day review, community sharing of the plan, and then the final adoption and getting the plan then to the state. Okay, so Taylor, if you go to the next one. So as we take a closer look at what's going to be happening with the plan development, as I kind of mentioned, really the first step in the process is that, and we're suggesting that the plan would have a community vision based on everything that we've heard from not only our conversations with you, but also from the community survey, the open house, and the, those types of community engagement activities that where we've kind of heard what the community has started to say so far. That would then lead to theme areas for the plan, and then goals and strategies being kind of assigned to those theme areas. Now, how this relates to or tying it back into your existing POCD, and actually it says on the slide 2016 POCD, but it should be the 2015 POCD. Sorry about that. There wasn't, the plan has got a nice setup, but it's really set up without a community, like an overarching community vision in the beginning. So that's one thing that we're suggesting or recommending that maybe we would change this time, is that we would have that overarching vision. And then we would have theme areas that would be kind of identified by that vision statement. And then we would have chapters that would be devoted to each one of those theme areas. And then we would show you, and we'll talk about this a little bit more in a minute, kind of like how some of the subjects in the existing POCD, as well as new subjects or refining those subjects that we've heard from talking to the community, would fit into those theme areas. Now, your current POCD, while it doesn't have any overarching community vision statement, it does have the 8 subject chapters that you're probably very familiar with. They range from demographics and housing to the village and economic development, down to historic and community resources and sustainability. And within each one of those chapters, instead of having like a vision statement right up front, it does have something. And for instance, in the housing, demographics and housing chapter, there's something called the housing action plan. And in our viewpoint, in looking at that, and that's kind of written like a vision statement for housing. The current one that's on the screen right now for this, that is in the housing action plan section, says that Woodbridge will work to preserve the value and character of the town's existing housing stock while enhancing the variety and options available through future development opportunities. New development will be sensitive to the existing land use patterns and housing character, creating character, and then a new sentence, creating options for Woodbridge's youngest and oldest families to help long-term residents stay in the town, and those who are starting out to develop roots and invest in the town's future. That's kind of written like a vision statement, what we would be taking is like little pieces of that from what we've heard and kind of creating an overarching one, but then making sure that in each theme area we would have something similar, so some of those ideas would carry forward. Okay. So with that, I will turn it over to Taylor to kind of walk you through kind of our draft vision statement that we have for you as a starting point. And she will kind of explain a little bit about how we recommend a vision statement being, kind of share the draft, and then we can discuss it a little bit, but we know that since you're seeing it for the first time tonight, what we want to do is give you a week or so to take a closer look at it and then share back comments. And then I'll loop back on that at the end to talk about next steps to kind of tell you exactly how much time and how much time you think you want to look at it. And then probably in early December or so, we would share the final draft vision statement back with you, or we would come back together if we have maybe different examples that maybe you all have suggested to kind of complete that process. Okay, Taylor?
And Taylor, I think you may need to be in front of a microphone, unfortunately.
I
And-
can stand here and would this work? Just a little bit closer.
And before you do, just a question
Sure.
to sort of set up this vision statement. Do you envision it as the opening of the POCD document is first this vision statement, and is there a big
Almost.
one and then visions for each of the 8 subject areas, or maybe
Right.
Taylor's getting into all that?
Yeah, I mean, no, I think that's an open conversation for the whole, and that's something that we do want to fine tune with you as we start to develop in the next month to really make sure that you're concurring with our draft table of contents for the plan. But what we're visioning right now for the vision statement would be, there probably would be an introduction chapter just to kind of explain the reasons for the POCD, and then there would probably be the Woodbridge Today, the context chapter where we would kind of review some of the data from the existing conditions, and then that would lead to then the vision chapter, which would present the vision, and then that would lead to then the individual theme chapters, which would again have a vision. A vision, they would have their own vision statement as well.
Thanks.
All right, so the community vision, we build it in 3 parts essentially. Those components are who we are, where we want to go, and how we will get there. So we've crafted a draft vision statement based on the data we have, the feedback we've gotten from the survey and the community through the open house, as well as just our knowledge and working on this week to week with Chris. We've also given out 3 examples of recent POCDs that we've worked on, just for you to get a flavor of how they kind of come together in the end. So these are excerpts from existing plans, but they're jazzed up a little bit in the final report and whatnot. So it gives you a little bit of an idea about some of the language we can use and how we've framed these beforehand. So I'm going to present the vision to you all in 2 parts. The first part is
Just real quickly too, I'll just say that you want to look at this sheet right here, because this has the actual proposed vision.
Yeah,
And then
that-
Taylor
and
will
that's the
break it
same
down, so
content
you
I'll
want to
go
look at
over.
this sheet.
So the first part is the first 2 paragraphs. It's who we are and where we want to go. So we kept the who we are kind of short and sweet, and kind of paying homage to why people want to live here, what they come here for, and acknowledge the residents there. We then move into a kind of where we're going to go, visioning statement, and we briefly introduce the themes here, but we're also just building upon what we've heard and what we know is valuable to the community in this statement. So some of the big things here that we're highlighting are, growth is pursued in a responsible manner, sustainability is at the forefront of our decision making, and the rural and small town feel of the community and those values are maintained throughout all of that. We feel those are some large enough but really valuable theme areas for the community here. And you'll see on the slide and the printout that we've got some text in red, or on the slides, just pointing it out. We play around with the language of the vision statement a lot. There's a lot of alternatives we can use. We've given a couple different examples. We started with a couple versions of this and narrowed it down. Couldn't decide between some sentences, so we just wanted to present this to you all, let you know that there's a lot of flexibility here and room to edit.
Also in the the opening statement of like who we are, we know that this is very personal to like the TPZ and you. So I think we have also initially put some ideas, but we know that that might be the part where you guys might have a lot of really good ideas. You know, like we just said, Woodbridge is a quiet residential community that offers residents an excellent quality of life, blah, blah, blah. You know, there's, if you look at some of the other examples from some of the other communities, or if you have your own, or have done this for another exercise, we know that very likely you might have a lot of like different words or other things that you might want to put in there. So we're completely open. That's why we're kind of sharing you. We wanted to have a starting point, but we're hoping that everybody takes that really seriously and gives back some really good feedback that we can incorporate.
And so part 2 here is how we're going to get to where we want to go. So the way we've framed this, and as you can see in the other examples we've provided as well, we like to break out the material of the plan into theme areas that would encompass a lot of different concepts. So our first one is pursuing responsible growth and housing diversity. We know those are key points for you all moving forward in balancing those endeavors. We've also got embracing sustainability. That was something, a strong element of your last POCD. We know we want to carry that forward and stay on top of it for the future. We also have maintaining community values, so maintaining the rural, suburban, small town feel you have, and the community character, but also the physical character of the town. So this is your open spaces as well, historic and cultural resources. And then on the right here on the side, we just wanted to highlight some focus areas. So as we develop these theme areas for a plan, we are thinking about, okay, what content is going into that chapter, that section. And so our general idea for, growth and housing diversity includes economic development, your village district, business district, housing diversity, and then community infrastructure and transportation. A lot of those elements would tie into that theme. Then for sustainability, we have a focus on environmental stewardship, natural resource quality, low impact development, sustainability, and social and economic sustainability as well. And then for community values, we figured we were focusing on historic and cultural resources, facilities and amenities that the town offers, and then open spaces and natural resources as well. And so you can see there's some overlap. All of these items aren't always looked at, in a silo. They cross paths here, and we may have goals that address multiple topics in various themes. This is our first shot at outlining where we kind of think information might fall. But it's really like a all-encompassing, all of these chapters work together and will guide us forward here.
Also, just to kind of further that, thanks Taylor, is that for just to give you an understanding, and this might be more clear when we talk about next steps, or if you have questions, we can certainly explain it. But each of the focus areas, right now we're calling them focus areas, but they would really be, they would be specific goals under each one of those theme areas. So, and at a minimum, there'd be one goal per each one of the focus areas. There might be 2 or 3. And then, so there would be the vision for that theme area. Then there would be the various goals that would be meeting those different focus areas. And then under each goal, there would be several strategies. And then under every strategy, there would be a series of several policies, that you would be your guiding policies for that. And then there would also be specific action steps. We do like to break out policies to be different from action steps, because policies would really be used by the TPZ very specifically, maybe in approving or reviewing applications. And then action steps would be, potentially direct actions that either planning economic development within the town would be pursuing, or maybe other departments. For instance, like, sidewalk expansion program that might actually be coming under the Department of Public Works, but we would be mentioning it in the plan because they might need a grant, or just saying that, we would support that as an important component of the growth management document, the POCD for the town. Okay, so obviously, we can circle back with questions or look at it in more detail, but just to kind of wrap up or just to kind of explain how this is going to fit into the next 3 months. So, for this month, as we're already halfway through November, what we're hoping to do is, we presented you with the draft theme area, community vision statement with 3 possible theme areas. We're hoping that over the next week or so, that you all can continue to review that and refine that and get us some suggestions or edits back. Hopefully, since Thanksgiving is next Thursday, we were thinking that maybe by next Wednesday. Of course, if you need more time and that's what we can talk about, we can certainly extend that. And then that would be finalized, hopefully by, if your comments came and people were on board with the general suggestion that we had, we could potentially finalize that by the 30th. If not, if we get some really good examples from you or some suggested different themes or something like that, we probably would coordinate that with, through Chris, share what we've heard from everybody back in a consolidated way, say, these are all the different suggestions that we've got. And then we probably would come back together in early December with another meeting to kind of find, as almost like a working session to finalize that vision statement. It's very important that we kind of finalize it in a draft format so that we can then really move forward in December to finalizing the theme areas and then really starting to take the goals out of the existing plan as well as new goals and start to align them to the theme area. Because by the end of December, we want to make sure that we have that framework of having the theme areas with all of the goals and then in place so that we can then start the strategies is the next step. We want to have that kind of in place by the end of December, because in January what we want to do is, and this is a more robust effort, is once we have your concurrence with the goals and the strategies and that we feel like we're covering all the bases with those, the primary subjects and strategies, we're going to be in the month of January and then in early February, we're going to be working very closely then with other town departments as well as all of the various different boards and commissions to make sure that their priorities that they may have are finding a potential place within the POCD under various policies and actions. And then that would end with us then going back out to the community as a whole in an open house environment to kind of share with them the community vision and theme areas to see if they're on board that we're covering all the bases, and then actually have them take a look at some of the policies and action steps that are being proposed, and then we would have an engagement activity with them to really see if there's other action steps that they might recommend under those strategies that maybe hadn't come forward yet with our conversations with the boards and commissions as well as town staff. Obviously, this is a lot of information in the process, but we're here to continue to walk you through it one step at a time, but that's kind of the big picture of what's going to be happening over the next 3 months. Sure, you want me to open it up for questions now?
Yeah, that sounds good. Should we turn the lights back on or?
Yeah,
Or
maybe
is
keep
there
the
any more to this?
presentation on, but maybe turn the lights up.
Yeah.
And then if we need to circle back on something, maybe we can lower them again.
So I have a question. Any discussion we have about language, does that have to be in a session? Can we do this by email a little bit amongst ourselves, or how does that happen? Like if we have language we want to add or subtract, this might be a question for Chris. But do we have to have, a session or something to do that?
Add to the vision statement?
Do any of the material, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if you can distinguish between this activity and our normal activity in terms of FOI restrictions. And I think that anything like you're describing is potentially in violation of FOI rules.
So in order to suggest changes, we have to go into session.
Well, I think initially what I was thinking, but we can fine tune this, is I was thinking that you would individually look at it to see if you have suggestions or whether you concur.
Oh, okay.
So I think it's like at least between now and the 27th, at a minimum, it would be a individual review. And suggestion.
Understood.
And then once we gather, once you forward your comments back to Chris, when Chris and Taylor and I start to, combine them, if we see, oh, well, this is something completely new, or it's conflicting with what this commissioner said, that's where we would potentially have to come together back as a group and then say, hey, these are all the comments that we got, but we have some conflicting ones, or we got a really good idea, say from you, but everybody else hasn't seen it because you wrote like a whole entirely new vision statement or a whole new theme area. That's why we would have to come back together as a group. We could share that information, though, I think if we consolidated it in advance of the meeting, but I think my understanding is that we would have to then vet that and finalize it in a meeting.
And what I don't think we can have is a long email chain where we're responding back
To
to
each
one
other.
another.
Right.
on-
Okay.
no.
So as long as you give like individual comments and then we consolidate them and then we share them back, but then probably at that point, we would be able to tell you by at the end of November if we need to come back together as a group, because we got some really good ideas that the whole group needs to kind of consider. Does that make sense to everybody? Chris, too?
Yeah, that makes
Yeah.
sense to me. I mean, that's what we've been doing, so.
And we do anticipate that, because we put some words out there, but really that's just to kind of help guide you. We really hope that there is a lot of robust comments and ideas that
Right.
fine tune it. But we're also okay if we landed on some really good points already. We understand that you're looking to us for some advice, and so, we've tried to put the best foot forward. But that is also why we shared some other examples with you, so that you might see how like another community maybe said the same thing. So that's what
Right.
this other document is. This is there's an example from the town of New Canaan, from Beacon Falls, and then also the town of Cromwell. These are just PDFs pulled from their existing plans, so they're kind of like in an illustrative format, but I think you can kind of see, what their theme areas are.
Are those towns with which SLR is consulting as well, or just randomly selected?
These are ones that we did from, they're from SLR. But certainly, there's other communities out there that it's an easy search if you wanted to see what, some of your other neighbors did. We could also compile them too, if you came back together and you said you wanted to see more examples. We could certainly supply that to you.
If I could recommend an example, because we had been working with Madison through the Sprott Housing Task Force, and I really do like their vision statement, because they include a lot of.
The town of Madison.
Yes, they have their, because they're going through an update of their POCDs, so they have a good draft vision that includes, a lot of elements of the idea of, plans. They talk about plans for changing climate and the need for increased equity for current and future residents. So they envision a community growth that welcomes new residents. So the idea of being welcoming and inclusive, I think would be a theme that I think would be good for our POCD. Because right now I feel like we've been on a no growth policy since 1990, and I think we need to move towards sustainable growth in terms of just, having a more vibrant community.
Well, that would fit in already with what we're proposing for the first theme area, maybe just with some slight wordsmithing or adjustments. I know that the word, once you review that, you will see that we did include the word equity in there in a couple places. So I think once you review it in more detail, you might find some of those ideas there. But I think that the welcoming aspect would also fit into the maintaining community values. I think a lot of communities, and what we're seeing out there is that in that like community character, community spirit, that's where kind of like the welcoming of new residents and embracing existing residents kind of falls as well.
So a sort of quick structural question. I know you've presented us 3 of these theme areas, just quickly, New Canaan has 4. I mean, is there a sweet spot in this sort of opening? Is there a sweet spot of
Yeah.
the number that, like, if we have 10, we're in trouble. If we have 2, it's
Right,
too
well, I mean,
few.
right, I mean, I think when you're collapsing from like a chapter or specific subject document down to a theme, you want to want to have between 3 and 5. If you have more than 5 themes, it starts to be kind of overwhelming, and then why not maybe then go back to like an individual chapter. But for a town the size of Woodbridge, I think 3 makes a lot of sense. But certainly that's why we're talking with you, and we want to get your feedback. If you feel that you want to have an additional one or break one out or something like that, we're here to listen and respond to your desires on that. Sometimes when there has been there's some plans out there now that I know of that have 5, and they usually try to collapse them to be very simple themes if it's like 5, like live, work, play, that type of a thing.
I mean, just another thought I have when I'm reading the part 1 where we want to go. The last sentence talks about balancing identity with growth that is suitable for the community. And just another dynamic I think that should be factored in, that we're now required under the update of the Zoning Enabling Act to plan and zone on a regional basis. So somehow working that aspect in there as well.
Okay, so being like something about like regionally involved or aware or cooperating.
Well, it goes beyond that. It's actually planning and zoning to address regional needs.
So something there, growth that is suitable for the community and our region's needs. It's that type of
Right.
language reflected
Sure.
there.
That's a good point, and that would be a good suggestion.
I wanted to say, I think this is a great start. There are a number of instances of kind of non-specific words that also have a little bit of a value judgment baked in that just give me pause. So the words responsible, reasonable, appropriate. It makes me think that maybe our group can do more to extract from the community survey and also just articulate what the goals should actually be. Because there's just not 2 people that are going to give you the same definition of what, precise definition of what responsible growth looks like, So I'm wondering if there's a way that we could just be more explicit in what it is that we really want to achieve, So it's a general comment, and it's something I can think about more when I sit down with edits, but I think those words can and probably should be replaced with something just slightly more specific to illuminate the directionality of the way that we want to grow.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's exactly what we were kind of suggesting, is that we want it to be your words and ones that you're comfortable with, but and I think while this is the vision statement, the community, it is listed as a community vision statement, as we've talked about, it is your document because you ultimately are the group that approves it, but you're, putting together all what you've heard from the community, and what you know about the community. You want to make sure that it is covering that broad spectrum, but in the end, it has to be something that you're very comfortable with, that you feel leads the charge for the TPZ as well. And that will come up a lot too once we start getting into like the goals and the policies, for instance, and action steps. Based on all of the experience that Taylor and I have in other communities, we know that we will be very carefully choosing the words at that point. And again, it will ultimately be the words that you're comfortable with. I mean, there's a lot of communities that get into the real debate about between like whether you should say should or shall or may or would.
Yeah.
And that can sometimes causes a lot of a lot of conflict within the community. And some, it's a balancing act.
That was another thing I noticed. I think there's a phrase that says will ensure. You know, I think I would probably say we'll strive to ensure or we'll prioritize or something
Yeah.
like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so that's
yeah.
exactly why we want to get your feedback.
Sure. Thank you.
We also, one thing that we also have tried to be very careful is that in sometimes you'll see, you know, because with a vision statement, you would, you know, you'll see like maybe for other types of plans or something like that, there might be like we will or the town will. We try to be very careful with that because some in the community, some people might perceive like if you use the word town, they might think of that only meaning like the town government, when in reality it was meant to mean like the town as a whole. But some people just see that differently. So we have been very careful just to use the word Woodbridge in this particular case, and it is repeated, but that's what we try to see as the like the greater community. But again, you all can take a different choice in that matter. But we try, and it's very easy to like slide in the word we or our community or something, but it's something to think about. But initially we've tried to stay just with Woodbridge being like the we and the our and the town.
And just one other point I just want to like just have in the back of your minds as we're reviewing the vision statement, because we've run into this scenario before where we've heard, you know, this word can be interpreted legally in a lot of different ways, but also just, you know, from personal perspectives. We do, once we're drafting the chapters, we also have the ability to define what those things mean in more detail. So if, you know, let's say you decide to keep the word responsible for right now, but you need more time to think about what that means to the community, we can still develop that and define it throughout the chapter progression as well. It's just, you know, another perspective to have while you review it, and you know, more is coming kind of way.
So that is a good point that in some ways this is the abstract of the later document that will define in maybe even in a definition, but or at least through the content of what responsible growth means in the context of Woodbridge.
Mm-hmm.
And this, in essence, is anticipating that's coming but condensing it up front.
And the, yeah, and, you know, we basically want, you know, throughout each one of the steps, and it starts with the vision, is that we want to start to build the case for the justification for the various goals and strategies and actions. You know, so you want to, you know, even with the things that we'll pull out of like the community profile, you know, when we bring up, usually a lot of times we bring out specific points that this is a focus area for like housing, for instance, like what, you know, what of the many aspects of housing are wanting to be focused on. And so therefore we're trying to build that case for that type of recommendation.
So that said, would love for you to give me a little help on the maintaining community values one, because at my quick glance, that's the one that I've probably need the most help understanding, and particularly it's Woodbridge is a community to its roots. I'm just curious that, and I also have some other. Our opening line is that we're quiet. I'm not sure that's what we want to lead with.
Well, remember I said that you guys are the ones that are going to know that one the best, but we just kind of, you know, that first sentence is like really where you guys can really put forward like what you think you are as Woodbridge. Because remember that first sentence is like who we are or what is the town. And some communities put in a lot about like if you look at the Beacon Falls example, they talk very specifically about some of their natural resources that are within the town that have defined them because they went from being a mill town to where they are today. And so the river and the mill town aspect played a very important role. And so, you know, that those types of things can be really incorporated in that.
I also think, you know, sometimes a resident only sees this plan process happen once when they live in the town or something, or twice if they're, you know, a lifelong resident, whatever. You know, it's only coming around every 10 years. I think sometimes people get scared that a new plan is going to completely change the town that they came to. So I think a big part of the maintaining the community values theme is ensuring that we're keeping the things that are drawing people here today in the first place, kind of ensuring that those are protected and recognized as like valuable assets to the community. For instance, we know, that there's concerns about losing open space. Well, that's part of the identity of the town, or something, so that might be an element that that would fall into that area. There might be a great population that's really worried about what we're doing with historic structures or districts, and that's another opportunity for us to protect the values of that particular group or issue in that stance.
One other, I think one aspect of what we looked at to develop these initial community vision statement was the postcards from the future activity at the open house, which I don't think we kind of made as clear because, there were quite a few that were filled out. As you're thinking about your ideas, you might want to circle back to that summary report. And I know that's where the word quiet came from, because I think several people in their postcard mentioned that. So I think that was kind of like where our inspiration was for that. But again, that first line could potentially change pretty drastically based on your ideas. But take a look at the postcards that were filled out by, I think we received like 39. There's quite a few for that, because that was really like what was supposed to be the start of the visioning activity, and we wanted to make sure that the community visions that were initially put out there were kind of incorporated. Maintaining community values, though, I think values could be, like the word value could be changed for attributes or aspects or something like that, because if you go to the slide that shows what's going to be in that one, that last one is kind of talking about historic and cultural resources, community facilities and amenities, as well as open spaces and natural resources. So it's really kind of getting at, what are the common elements that really are worth, desire to kind of be maintaining them. It could also be quality of life. This one we were trying to use something different than just saying maintaining quality of life. But I definitely think that the word values could be changed. But we saw that there was that community quality, character and quality of life were definitely a common theme in everything that we've heard from the survey, to the statements that we got in the community survey, to what we heard at the open house. So I think that there has to be a theme area that somehow combines those ideas, but it definitely could be framed in like a different wording. Does that help clarify that a little bit?
It does. Everyone else feel free to jump in. I just said a few other, I can send this to you as well.
Sure. Yeah,
I did see and liked, I guess, New Canaan's in that embracing sustainability. Their version was in sustainability and resiliency, and particularly in light of the recent storms that just
Flooding.
a few towns over, and flooding, and
Right.
so that's something that's maybe even emerged since our October, or at least has hit home in a new way here. But that to me would be a nice add or addition to thinking about that future, and a future that will be changed through extreme weather events and the like.
Well, that definitely has to be a goal at a minimum, and I think we were thinking that most likely it would fall in embracing sustainability, but again, that one could be reworded, or it could be broken up.
Yeah, but again, this nice exercise of that vision is meant to have all these words matter, and particularly the headers
Exactly.
matter, and the ones that sort of help guide the reader, that these are the 3 to 5 things that are going to organize everything
Right.
that comes in the 120 or whatever pages that follow. And if someone only reads this, which
Right.
some people may not get past that.
Right, and that's why you're catching that and then sharing that with us is exactly what we're looking for.
Can you help me understand the timeline a little bit more? When you say finalize this statement, Does that mean ideally not making any edits to it as we continue to go through the process?
Well, I mean, I think, yeah, I think when I say finalize, it would be a final draft, because we would want to still share that with the community, and we could make tweaks to it as we move through the process if something comes up and we think about it later. So it would be like a final draft. And I think based on what we're already hearing, I think we probably will need to, it sounds like everybody's going to have some really good ideas, and so it sounds like we probably will have to come back together in sometime in early December. So we won't be finalizing it by November 30th. But it
Okay.
will be it would be a final draft.
Okay. The reason I ask is that I think about a statement like this as both being sort of summative and synthetic, and until we go through the process a little more, I wonder, the extent to which we'll really feel great about this. I like the abstract idea, that Chairman put forward, because an abstract is written at the end, after you kind of have the results and you kind of have had time to digest and understand them. I'm not suggesting that we wait until the end here, but I would like to know that there's a little bit of wiggle room if we want
Sure.
to change the priority or order of something later.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
I mean, we want to try to, we're trying to, like I said, a final draft, we want to try to lock it down somewhat, because we need to have very constructive conversations when we go out to talk with the boards and the commissions and as well as other staff, because we want to say this is the vision that the TPZ and the community have kind of put forward. So now we're trying to align, some of your needs or actions or desires for the next 10 years. And we want to, so that they can see where it would potentially line up. And so going into in January, when we have these meetings with town staff and all that, we would present with them the final draft of the vision as well as the goals, so that they could kind of start to see where their ideas could start to align.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I'll also just note for folks, the headers matter, the order may be something we also want to sort of think about of what
Yeah,
comes.
that's definitely true, and I totally agree, and that's a good observation, and we actually did move them around several times on our own part. We were trying to look back and see which what we heard and what we felt might be even though we feel that they all should be equally as important, but we do know, and we have talked about this with other communities, that there might be some thought in the community or with the actual commission, the TPZ, of a priority, and that's one of the reasons why we put pursuing responsible growth and housing diversity first, because we knew that was what we've heard the most, and so we thought that probably was the important one to get the plan started. Some communities do start with more of quality of life or retaining values, but I think we see them as all important, but in your case, you might see that when the pursuing responsible growth and housing, or whatever that one ultimately ends up being, as the most important.
I do like the order, but I guess my question is, I do think there's probably going to be a lot of changes. Just reading through this, for some reason, I'm just feeling uncomfortable with the way it's presented, and I imagine we're going to have some changes to the language here. I guess my question is, when I only because I've been kind of active in providing comments, and I don't get any feedback as to why things weren't taken into consideration. And I just want to make sure that when we go through this exercise, that there's a discussion as to if I put something in terms of a language change and you decide you're not going to, it's not going to make it in, it's not going to make the cut. I'd like to probably have a robust discussion as to why it is or why it isn't, because I just sometimes feel like my comments are going into a black hole, and I know that's not your intention, but I just want to make sure that we kind of fully discuss this.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the desire of getting your, you're being presented with the concept tonight, getting your, putting your thinking caps on, so to speak, of what, what is important for you. We've kind of shared an initial idea, and we're looking forward to getting your opinions. but we're gonna have to come back together at a minimum as a whole group. So I think for this type of activity, which may be different than like a summary report, but for this type of activity and going forward, it's gonna have to be done with the full group and then decisions with the full group.
I think, we can discuss the format, but there might be an opportunity for, we gather all of this feedback for Chris over the next week or so. We come back in early December, whatever it is. Maybe we're live editing together. We're going through, you made this suggestion, you made this one, they're conflicting. How do we resolve that? What's the conversation when we edit the document as we're here? That might be an
Yeah,
option as
yeah.
far as
Well,
just,
that it would
so that
be.
we're seeing the changes in real time and working through them.
Yeah, I think when we come back together, and this will happen at several of our meetings going forward, because we'll have to do the same thing for like goals and strategies, that it will have to be an active working session. A meeting, but the computer will have the screen and we'll actually be typing it out. And then when we leave, we would say, is everybody, are all the commissioners comfortable with this final draft language for the vision statement? And there would have to be some concurrence, and then we would move on. Same thing with goals. I'm sorry.
Please.
Once we have that in the theme areas, and then we start to put the goals together, we'll do the same type of thing where we'll send a document out to you with the theme, and then with each one of the goals that we think are lining up, and then we would come back. We would meet with you to say, okay, are you comfortable with the goals? And then once we have the goals, then we would then align strategies underneath, and we'd have to have working sessions.
Yeah, I would just have two comments. I think there are two elements to this. I think Jeff put his finger on it early. Some uncertainty on our part about the forum for appropriate discussion and making sure we're doing it in a public enough forum. And so I agree that if we all send our suggestions to Chris, there should be no collating or additional work on Chris's part, but if that can be put into a document that can be part of the public record, I think that would satisfy the requirement, our suggestions. And then I agree. I think there may be a sort of a vague, painful, distant memory of going through the update of the planning and zoning regulations that makes us averse to live editing, but I do think live editing that involves discussion, that allows everybody to feel heard, is going to be necessary.
One thing to maybe start to think about too is, we might need to have like a working group or something like that gets charged with meeting, or we just have to set up like more regular like working group meetings. Because we will start having like a higher volume of documents to review with you. So that's just something to keep in mind. Or
Other questions? Logistically, would it be easiest to have this in a editable Word document that we do some track changes on, or do you want
Yeah,
to email with it? What makes everyone's life easier?
Obviously, I think, because we didn't send them any documents yet, right? Because we just sent them to you. So I think what we'll do is, for some reason we hadn't gotten that far. We knew we wanted to present it to you all tonight. So I think that's exactly what we'll do, is that tomorrow we will send the Word version of the vision statement to you, so that each one of you can look at it, and then you can make sure you use track changes, unless you want to just start from scratch and write something. But we'll send you a Word version so that you can, start to put your edits into it.
And then we'll send them to Chris individually.
Right.
She'll
And I'll forward them.
to your team. And
Now,
you
what
to-
about, is it possible do you think next Wednesday, the 27th, is a reasonable amount of time? At least for that initial, everybody to kind of put some initial thoughts down?
If we're planning to have in-person, live edit session, I think that's probably enough time to at least get some thoughts to Chris. What do you guys think?
I think it'd be good to do it before Thanksgiving if we can.
Okay, well then we'll make sure we get that Word document to you tomorrow via Chris. And then we'll look forward to getting your responses. And then right after Thanksgiving, we'll meet with Chris and we'll compile everything that we've gotten. And then we'll strategize on getting that information back out to you and then strategizing on having the next work session to finalize a draft of the vision statement.
Just jumping ahead in terms of developing goals and strategies, how does that process look like? Because just looking at the housing section, obviously, we're not going to have the same strategies as were incorporated back in 2015 because that has completely changed. So how do you envision those goals and strategies being updated?
Well, we definitely will, we will kind of align the goals and strategies of the existing plan with the new plan as a starting point. And then we will look internally before we share it back to you with like where we see gaps based on what we heard from everything from the community profile, from the community survey, and from the open house. And then we will, similar to tonight, we will then share back what we think is what we think are the primary goals for the theme, and then we will vet that with you so that you can say, no, we think we need to fine tune this one a little bit, or it needs to be adjusted, or we don't even, or we need a whole new goal or something like that. The same thing with strategies. We would look through the existing plan to pull up strategies, and they're kind of overarching, but then we would work with you to fine tune them or get your suggestions.
Well, the goals from the last POCD, none of those particular strategy, because they were limited to like the village district, and I don't see any of those strategies going forward into the new decade.
Right. Well, you might also be thinking more about policies and action steps with like the more specific, because I think, the goals will be very broad.
Right.
And we will also explain that once we have the meeting to kind of introduce that, where we will make sure that the various goals are very broad. And then the strategies will be a little bit more specific, but it still won't be like a specific policy or action. So we're hoping that at least at that juncture, most of, you can start to see where some of your more specific recommendations that the housing committee might be wanting to have incorporated can start to align, but they wouldn't really come in until the policies or the action step phase, I would think.
Okay, is there any consideration of also linking the adopted housing plan into the POCD, so the housing plan is in fact consistent with the POCD, because that's important, for...
we have to do that. We're required by the state. And in some of our other town examples, we might have a goal that says expand housing, expand housing diversity. And then under that, there might be a strategy that says, expand multifamily housing in downtown or in the village. And then a specific policy or action step would then maybe be, to study the zoning, review the zoning code for shortfalls in housing diversity within the village district or something like that. But then related to anything for the affordable housing plan, there would be a strategy that says, continue to implement the town's affordable housing plan. And then under that, we could actually then specifically list the recommendations of that plan or the most current ones that the housing committee is desiring to be included. But there would be a strategy that would be overarching about the affordable housing plan, and then the individual policies and action steps under that would take the form of the recommendations in the existing plan that you desire to, that we as a group desired to move forward. But it could be either very specific or very broad, depending on the desire of the full group. But the mention of the affordable housing plan and pursuing those recommendations is required by the state.
To be in the POCD.
Right. And we don't want to be in conflict. We don't want to have a recommendation or like a strategy or an action step that's not congruent with the affordable housing plan.
Okay.
But most likely, even if it's like a different word or a different idea, it's probably still going to be consistent with it. It's hard to be more specific than that until we get down to that point, but I think you'll see that we will get there, and you'll see how that will kind of come together at that point. But it might be kind of hard to see that fully at this point, unless you take a look at some other plans. I mean, it doesn't have to be an SLR plan. I mean, you could look at other towns that have updated their POCD recently, and you can see how they've incorporated the discussion about that town's affordable housing plan. I know that the examples that we gave you, like for instance, New Canaan does have an entire goal and then a series of strategies about affordable housing, and you'll specifically see the mention about their affordable housing plan, and they're continuing to pursue their recommendations.
Okay, I guess it's just I guess you just have to let the process play out. But I know that committees and commissions were asked to give recommendations to the plan by the end of December.
Well, I think that's just to make sure that they've talked about it and they've had some thinking, so that when we set the date for the roundtable meetings, that they have something to bring to us at that point.
Right, but I just want to make sure that they're authentically, considered for input into the POCD, because we are, and I know a lot of the commissions are working on their input into the POCD.
So I've specifically been talking to Economic and Development and Conservation, and today Human Services came in. And so what they've been doing is going through the existing POCD for those sections that apply to them. And then I've been asking them to focus on the goals and whatnot at the very back, to look at those and see what they might think should be carried forward, and if there's something that's lacking, what they would suggest, to go in there and whatnot. And so as far as I know, that's where they're coming from and whatnot. So that's what they're looking for.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to understand the process of that input being, part of the whole process. I'm just trying to
It's a definite
figure it out.
part of the process, yeah.
Okay.
And, those will put forward what we hear from those, what we get from all the different groups and conversations that we have. We want to try to make initially the policies and the actions, we want to make them as robust as possible, because we know that as a full group, there might be, and also as a town administration, who will also be reviewing it before we get to that, like a substantially complete plan. There will be the need for some vetting. It's not uncommon for recommendations that we put forward. I mean, usually they always get narrowed down. Like, we might have 10 action steps under something, and with working with the full group, and then also talking with town administration, sometimes some actions get crossed out because they're like, that's not something that the full TPZ wants to pursue. Or that's not a grant that we have the eligibility for. That may not happen, but I'm just saying that does happen, and it does have to be a group consensus type of thing, and we're balancing a lot of different competing ideas. But initially, we're going to put as many actions and policies out there for the full group to consider. So that's why we want to have these robust conversations with all the different boards and commissions and town departments, to make sure that we hear everything that they're doing that's related to the town's conservation and growth management, so that it can be incorporated into the policy document that the POCD is.
Any more questions?
But I was just gonna say, but there are, it shouldn't take the place of, like, for instance, the open space. You know, there's like a open space, plan that the town has. The POCD should not become the open space plan. It should complement the open space plan. It should make reference to it, but it shouldn't have anything in it that's conflicting. And the same thing with the activities that the Housing Commission or committee is doing on the affordable housing plan. We have to make sure it's consistent, but we don't want to make the POCD become the affordable housing plan, since that's its own separate document. We want to make linkages, if that makes sense.
And it sounds like, thank you, Chris, you've been engaging with our commissions to ensure that they are bringing up their
Early on, yeah.
Yeah.
items of interest, the things they'd like to
And we
see.
have to thank Mika, because Mika's been prodding too, so.
Good.
He's my
Yeah.
silent prodder.
And we did talk about that a while ago, because it is that we did feel that that was something that's crucial for like the other town departments and commissions, because in some, to take it seriously, and coming from, like the first selectman, as far as like we want you, meaning the other town departments and boards to participate, you know, having it come from that perspective is very helpful, making sure that we get their input. And that when we do set the official date for the roundtable meetings or the conversations that we'll have, that they know that it's important that they attend and make time and effort to come to those meetings. Because first selectman said so.
Terrific.
Only if that would work.
So thank you both for your presentation tonight, your hard work thus far, the hard work that is to come as well. And I think we all look forward to working with you as we enter the next steps of this process.
Okay,
So
Great.
check your emails tomorrow
For a Word version.
a Word version.
Yeah. I'm not going to subject you to my scribbles. Even
That's
I
why
can
you
barely
wanted a
read.
Word version.
I know. Excellent. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Moved and second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same abstentions? Thank you all for the special meeting.